on here. I've got it programmed to go a little slower. Just so you guys know, I might be slinging a few pages at you here, so you get ready over there. Put your catcher's mitt on. So who else, be honest, who else, when you pulled into the parking lot tonight, thought that the co-op had made a mistake and scheduled a members meeting on the same night as the day? Be honest, because I did. That was my first thought, because you couldn't have convinced anybody with a $100 bill 5 years ago that this many people would show up at the Callaway County Democratic Party meeting, could you? Yeah. And look at this. Give yourselves around. I want to be honest with you. I had a hip replacement a few weeks ago, just 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to cheat a little bit tonight. And I'm going to use some notes. I normally don't do that, but I was telling Stacy and the crew over here, they put me on some pretty strong pain medication when I got out of surgery. And about the 10th day, I noticed that I was laying in my recliner and I was having a conversation with somebody that wasn't in the room. And I kid you not, about being a trapeze artist in a circus. And I thought, well, hell, that's kind of like being a Democrat in Trump's America, so I'll give it a shot.
I'll show you my hip replacement if you should.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
I can't wear my bikini anymore.
You go to the right beach and you don't have to. Get a little risque. So many of you know me, but some of you might be asking, who is this guy and why should I listen to him? And that's a fair question to ask. My name is Will Westmoreland. I'm a father and I'm a grandfather. I'm a small farmer, and like many of you, I've been working to get Democrats elected in rural America, I'd say for over 30 years now. I could give you the real number, but I've lost about 50 pounds and I'm feeling good, so I'm starting to lie about my age a little bit. But I was born at St. John's Hospital in Springfield, Missouri. And Stacy, I apologize in advance. You've heard all this 25 times, but tonight's 26. My dad died of cancer when I was 5 years old. He had a really rare form of cancer, and I know some of you went through that as well. And we moved into government housing. Any of you that have ever been to Springfield, Missouri, or lived there, on the north end of Springfield, there are some projects there that were built specifically to house poor people and South Vietnamese supporters of the Vietnam War that were coming back from Southeast Asia. And we moved in there and we took advantage of every welfare program that was available from the federal government. We got a housing allowance. We got food stamps. Now, not the EBT card that you could sneak in there without anybody knowing that you were poor. We called it the Jesus food stamps. Red and yellow, black and white. You can buy food at every site. You remember what I'm talking about? Who else was poor back in the day? Who grew up dirt poor? That used to be embarrassing. And I told Stacy at a meeting one time, I said, now it's like asking somebody if they won the Congressional Medal of Honor. Well, you're poor? You're damn right I was. I was as poor as they come. And then it becomes a contest about who was the poorest. But when I was 7 years old, my grandfather finally had enough. And he showed up one day with a pickup truck and a horse trailer. And he moved us to our family farm in Brighton, Missouri, and I became a farm kid. We had a 600 cow-calf operation back in the day, and it was a little bit different. There were no beautiful Herefords and Angus and all that. What we did is we bought the Holstein bull calves and the heifers that the dairy farmers didn't want to pay to grow up to full size before they bred them, and we raised them, and then we resold them to the packers and back to the dairy farmers. So even in our cattle business, we were a poor man's cattle farmer. We just couldn't afford the specialty breeds. But I changed on that farm, and I say that to this day. I truly did become a farm kid. I got up in the morning, I did my chores, I spent my days on that 600 acres exploring the clean water creeks, hanging out with my dog, enjoying the fields. Should say hanging out with my dad too. If you grew up on a farm, you have spiritual moments. There's no doubt about it. The animals, the freedom, the Sunday afternoon church socials where you went to church, and this was back in the day when the Methodist church was full of revival and screaming preachers, and you went and did your time, and then you had old cold ice cream when it was all over. We had a little small town soda shop owned by the Loonies. I'm not kidding you. That was their last name, the Looney family. And it just became a lifelong passion of mine, rural America. Because it started to change when I was a kid. Any of you that are my age or older, you know the 1980s were the first time since the Great Depression that rural America really got a punch in the mouth. And of course it was under the leadership of another Republican president who had no idea what rural policy was and how farming worked and how to save agriculture. Even when I graduated from school and started my career as a telecom executive, other than a couple of short stints in Fort Worth, Texas, where 2 of my kids were born, and Columbus, Ohio, where the other 2 were born, I lived in rural America. I served as a rural Democratic Party chair, I'm proud to say, in 2 states, North Carolina, Davidson County, the last state, and Lexington, the last city in the United States of America to recognize the Martin Luther King holiday. I took on a corrupt local sheriff there named Gerald Heggie, the toughest sheriff in America. He bugged my house. He bugged the house of the candidate running for sheriff. They would kill animals and throw them in my driveway in the middle of the night to scare my kids. He didn't know I'd grown up on a farm in Missouri and that I'd seen a hell of a lot worse on a Saturday. And we ran him out of office. We ran his crooked rear end out of office, and we got a clean sheriff in town. So I've always been just a little bit of a rabble-rouser, but mainly to my friends and family. So eventually I moved back to Missouri, and I started operating a 300 cow-calf operation with my family here in Missouri, and we did that for years until my stepfather passed away from interstitial lung disease. And for those of you that know, that's when your lungs turn to plastic, and he lost his life. Then my mother had an aneurysm. You know the old saying, when it rains, it pours. We went through it, and we ended up selling our farm, and I went into what my row crop and cattle buddy farmers call frou-frou farming. They'll always know it as frou-frou farming. I'm an agroforester now. I raise elderberries and Chinese chestnuts and all that good stuff, and I catch a lot of heat for that, but up until just recently I could tell my cattlemen friends I make more off an acre of elderberries than you make off of 10 acres of cattle. I can't say that right now, but there was a day. Then Donald Trump came into the picture. Yeah, go ahead, hiss, you can do it. And I watched his shenanigans, and as dangerous as he was, I couldn't find anyone who was articulating the harms that were happening out here in rural America. So I did what any 56-year-old white farmer with a lot of self-confidence would do. I handed my phone to my oldest son and I said, Nathan, make me a TikTok account. I've got some things I want to say. And I think what made me successful, I know I've got just a little bit of raw talent, there's no doubt about it, just about that much. But I think what made me successful is people would come onto social media and they would see this old white farmer sitting there with a red hat on, and they expected to get one kind of message. And I swear to God, I think it just completely rewired their brain when they got a message that they weren't expecting, and they said, well, hell, I'm going to like that guy and follow him. And 500,000 followers later, we've created the Back 40. We're going all over the country to advocate for rural America. And I couldn't be more proud to stand here tonight in front of what I know has to be close to 200 Democrats to fight like hell for rural Missouri right here in Callaway County. So thank you for having me. And we need advocacy right now, right? There's no doubt about it. When they invited me to come here, they said, Will, we're going to feed everybody 6 pounds of chicken. Then we're going to let Bethany, who's one of the smartest people I've ever met, and a scientist, get up and speak for 30 minutes before you. And right when everybody is starting to nod off and they're ready to go to bed, we're going to let you get up and please make your normal 50-minute speech 30 minutes long. And I'm like, sign me up, I'm in. Put me in, coach. Put me in. Politicians get caught up in policy. They love to talk about, even Democrats, they're cutting our health care, they're cutting back funding. This is the dollars that we're losing. These are the programs that we're getting cut. But what they forget about sometimes is those dollars and those policies have a real impact on people in rural America. It translates into personal stories of sorrow and sadness and people losing their lives and not being able to live the way they want to and getting an inferior education. Numbers translate into real life scenarios that mean something for the people that live where we live. And the problem where we live in rural America is that our communities are dying. Now, we've got two rural Americas, because I want to be honest about this. I don't want to be a sky is falling kind of guy. If you live within 40, 50 miles of a big city and you can go work in town every day and come home to your rural community, chances are you're doing okay. But you get outside of that zone, the data shows us that those communities are dying, and they're dying faster than they ever have before. They call this out-migration, and that's a fancy word that means all of our young people are moving away. Our young families, our capital, they're the foundation of our community. And communities are built on age diversity. Now, some of you young people, you'll appreciate that more when you're my age than you do now. And it's good to see you young Democrats here. I was a young Democrat. I was the president of the Franklin County Young Democrats back in the day. Yeah, you're going to get a great experience there. We're losing people all across America. 51%, I wrote these down, I'm going to read them if you'll forgive me, but I want to get the numbers right. 51% of our rural counties lost population between 2020 and 24. Over 2/3 of rural counties lost population from 2010 to 2020, and it's become the norm. And it's a downward spiral caused by you moms. I got a table in between me and all of you. No, all kidding aside, all kidding aside, why did I say that? Because moms are the primary decision makers in the family regarding family stability. And when you destroy rural health care, and when you destroy rural education, and when you destroy rural economic opportunities, moms and working age young people pack up and make the decision to move away to where the opportunities are, because as a mom, why should I put my kids at a disadvantage compared to other kids just to say I live in rural America? And that is a rational and fair decision, and it happens every day. And this pattern only creates more problems. In rural communities, when we lose young people, we end up with fewer job opportunities, lower wages, and guess what? Of all the United States in rural America, we have the fewest economic opportunities and the lowest wages of any other part of the country geographically. And I don't have to tell some of you this, especially if you're driving a farm truck over a back road, but our infrastructure is crumbling out here as well. 7% of our bridges are condemned. Go look up tonight in the Missouri Manual what condemned means. It means you're not supposed to drive on it. 12% of our rural roads are rated as unpassable and undrivable. 22% of rural Americans still don't have broadband, and we've been talking about that since I was 22 years old, and I'm 58 now. I know some of you are shocked. You're thinking, man, sworn he wasn't over 43, 44. Crumbling infrastructure has an impact on health as well. In some parts of the country, listen to this number. This should sicken every one of us. 38% of our rural children have suffered from parasitic infection due to contaminated water in rural America. And sometimes it's as simple as little Tommy got sick and had diarrhea for a day or two, to little Tammy ended up in the hospital and lost her life because of contaminated pipes that get replaced in cities on a regular basis so that doesn't happen. And while all this has been happening to us in rural America, Republican politicians have stood in front of us at election time and preached the gospel of fear and hate. They don't want to get our attention and our support by saying we're going to fix the problem and then actually doing it. Brown people are coming across the border to hurt those you love. Jews are funding liberal political movements that want to destroy your way of life. And don't kid yourself, my friends. When they say it's George Soros, they mean Jews. They figured out the language to couch their racism and anti-Semitism in. It's a racist trope as old as mankind, and over again they tell us to fear and hate one another. Well, I'm damn glad I don't belong to a political party that has built itself up on the stanchion and the ladder and the backbone of hate. They don't solve the problems that are created as they destroy our rural hospitals, our rural schools, and our small family farms and ranches. And I'm not afraid of a pretend boogeyman. I'll tell you that right now. I know the truth about these people that come here for a better way of life, just like my Irish and Scottish ancestors did. I'm not afraid of a pretend boogeyman, but I loathe the real boogeyman that walks the halls of power, catering to the rich man and eating prime rib at the table above, while we all in rural America fight for scraps down below. That's the boogeyman I love. And our party doesn't get a free pass either. You'll forgive me, but if you're going to speak truth to power, you got to speak truth to all power, right? Yes. How many times have you heard our Democratic friends say that if we could just win 3% more of the vote in rural America, we could win federal elections? Or rural America is getting what they deserve. FAFO, they're getting what they ask for. Let's win what we can there and not waste a lot of time and money. 3%? Get as much as we can? I want a school board that doesn't believe in banning books. I want a rural clerk of courts that believes in fair and free elections and not in the big lie. I want a state representative and a state senator who will fight to save our hospitals, our schools, and our economy in rural America, and not just somebody that pays lip service to it when they run for office every 2 or 4 years. I was asked to serve on the People's Cabinet for Rural America over a year ago at the DNC, and we haven't held a single event in over a year. Not one thing. So I'm stubborn as hell, and after a few months of that, I just said, you call me when you need me. In the meantime, I'm going to go do it myself. And many of you have made the same decision, and thank you for that. The Democratic Party needs to make a commitment to Democrats in rural America that they will provide. Did you hear the news? How many Democrats ran for office this year in Missouri? All but 3 offices, I believe, we were able to fill with a candidate. Some of those great candidates are here tonight. That's incredible. We should give ourselves That's one of the biggest complaints we've always, I don't even know if I need this. I'm just yelling. Let's go for it. It's one of the biggest complaints we've always had.
You need it.
I don't know why you took it away from me to begin with. All right.
There you go.
It's one of the biggest complaints we've had is that we can't get the party to dedicate the resources to get people and run. Now, when they do a good job, we need to pat them on the back. The party's done a great job. We've got candidates running. Now we've got to give them the support they need to win. So I've only told you what's happened to rural America under Republican leadership so far. The sad fact is that things are not getting better. I've told you the history. Let's talk about now. In rural healthcare, the GOP passed a bill that cut $137 billion from rural resources. Hundreds of rural hospitals are in danger of closing. Rural ambulance districts are shutting down. Doctors and nurses are moving away in droves, and it's been going on for decades. And I've got a chip on my shoulder when it comes to this. And you know why? When I was 12 years old, almost a little over 46 years ago, my grandfather and I got up on Good Friday, 1980, and we went out to the riding arena where we trained horses for our ranch, and we dug 44 post holes that day for a training arena. And as is always the case, on the very last hole, My glove got caught in the power takeoff of the head shaft, and it was pulled into the tractor. And I yelled, I was able to yell, turn it off, and my grandfather shut it down, and he climbed off the tractor wailing and crying, and I couldn't breathe because it had pulled my leather jacket up around my neck, and my grandfather pulled out his pocket knife. I swear it must have taken him an hour and a half to cut through that leather jacket with that little penknife, but he did it, and I took in a breath of fresh air, and he pulled me out of that machinery and unwrapped my arm and laid me down on the ground. And he went to the house, and in that day, you didn't have 911, did you? You had 2 stickers, one for the sheriff if your wife comes after you with the frying pan, and the other one was for the ambulance. And my friends, it took 2 hours. 2 hours for the ambulance to make it from Springfield, Missouri to Brighton, Missouri. And in the meantime, I wasn't praying, God, please save me. God, don't let me die. God, watch over my grandparents. I was praying what a lot of people in rural America pray. And what do you think that was? God, get the ambulance here. And you would think in that period of time things would have gotten better. And then my heart was broken the other day.
I just used this a little bit.
Might be. I cry at grocery store openings now. When you become a grandpa, that's the problem.
Sort of.
In Allen County, Kansas, a little 2-year-old girl just 3 weeks ago was hit by her parents' farm truck on the farm. Now you would think in 2026 all you would have to do is pick up this phone and dial 911 and you could get help, but no. Her parents loaded her in the truck. They drove for miles to meet an ambulance. She was transferred into the ambulance, and then they drove for miles to meet a helicopter. And then the helicopter finally got her to Children's Hospital in Kansas City. Didn't make it. Too late. Little 2-year-old girl passed away. Those accidents happened 46 years apart. And we're being treated the same way in rural policy now as we were when I was a 12-year-old kid. And in rural education right now, we are in the largest wealth transfer scam in American history. Bethany spoke about it just a moment ago. That's what it is. It's a wealth transfer program. Rural schools have set costs for treatment. Anybody here ever serve on a rural school board? Okay, you know you have set costs. You have to run those routes, whether there's 12 kids on that route or 1 kid on that route. Your fuel costs are set, etc. When cuts occur, they typically come directly from what? The things you can least afford it to come from. When you've still got to run those routes, when you've still got to put diesel fuel on the bus, when you've still got to meet the minimum requirements, then we typically cut education programs and the less popular extracurricular programs. And I've got a chip on my shoulder about this too, because where I learned to speak was in my local high school. One day I was arguing with the Harris twins, as I often did, because they were supporters of the President Ronald Reagan. And they love to call people who were on welfare queens. I got to quit using their name or come up with an alias, because one of these days they're going to watch one of my videos and I'm going to get a call. But it's true. And I argued with them that they didn't know what they were talking about. Even back then I knew that 90% of people that take advantage of the safety net in this country are off of it within 5 years. They use it as a hand up and not a hand up. And shame on anybody that says anything different. Yeah. Well, my speech and debate teacher in high school just happened to be walking down the hallway, and she saw this debate, and she said, "Will, I'm going to expect you to come over after football practice today and sign up for speech and debate." And I was petrified. What kind of honorable football player would show up at the speech and debate room to sign up for speech and debate? But I did, because she was an intimidating woman. And I went to my first debate tournament at Kickapoo High School in Springfield, Missouri. I swear to God, Stacy laughs every time she hears the story. This is what I showed up in. I had on a pair of my brother's corduroy pants that were 4 inches too long that I rolled up inside and took black electrical tape and taped it around my leg so it would hold it in place. I wore my grandpa's, swear to God, 1970s style butterfly dress shirt with a tie, a paisley tie that had to be even older than that. I wore my brother's hush puppy shoes, which I think he wore to work because they had pizza grease and hamburger grease on them. And then I wore my uncle's jacket that came down past my knees. I looked like an undertaker in northern Arkansas. No offense, Iowans make fun of us, we make fun of Arkansas, it's just how it is. But I won my first 5 rounds of debate, and in my very first tournament, I won 3rd place. And I got home, and the next day was football Sunday, and the phone rings, and my mom answers it, and she says, "Yes, ma'am, we'll be there. I promise we'll be there." And after school on Monday, I went down to Breathwaite's clothing store on the square in Bolivar, Missouri, and I walked in, and there were 5 or 7 of the sourest old silver-haired ladies dressed in red that you've ever seen in your entire life. I didn't know about the Red Hat Mafia. Nobody had ever told me about this crew. But you know what they did? They bought me 2 suits. They bought me 4 dress suits. They bought me 2 pairs of dress shoes. They bought me ties that looked like they were from the 1980s and not the 1930s. They bought me a leather briefcase that I could carry my debate case around in. And I'll never forget what Burl Harris said when I went to walk out the door. She said, "Willie," she still called, my whole 4 years of high school, she called me Willie. Again, an intimidating woman. She said, "Willie, when you go out and you debate or you do anything else, you not only represent yourself, but you represent your school and your little town." I've never forgotten that. Never have I forgotten that in my entire life. And my school invested in me. I did pretty good. I grew up with a mom and 2 sisters. I knew how to argue. I knew how to argue. Debate was like a debate tournament. Hell, that's easy compared to Saturday night at our house. And I'll never forget my proudest moment in San Antonio, Texas, was walking up to the board and writing, after some smug little punk from New York City wrote Bronx High School of Preparatory Science on the board. I'm like, who the hell writes the full name of their school out like that? I just wrote Bolivar High School, home of the Liberators, and underlined it. I went and sat down, and I won 3rd place in the nation in Lincoln Douglas debate. And I went on to get a full ride in college. Now, yeah, part of that was the natural talent of the physical specimen you see in front of me. But you know what most of it was? You already know the answer. Most of it was a little town that was willing to invest in me as a single kid with a father that died when he was 5, that grew up on the social safety net, that was good at spinning a yarn. And somebody saw that and said, "That's a kid we need to make an investment in." And it changed my life. So yeah, I've got a chip on my shoulder when Republicans want to take that environment that was so good to me and turn it over on its head and take those opportunities away from other kids that are growing up in rural America today. This transference program, we're taking money out of rural schools to give it to kids. 80% of them are already enrolled in private school. And get this, 20% of their parents make more than $250,000 a year. You make that argument make sense. You can't do it, so don't even try. It's time to stop funding private schools for the rich with money absconded from our struggling rural schools. Republicans have passed universal vouchers in 18 states. 15 states have limited vouchers, and the Trump administration right now is currently pushing a $20 billion national voucher plan. And you can rest assured he's doing it for his wealthy donors who control the private school networks, who run these schools and who build these schools, and where they can indoctrinate our kids with their narrow-minded view of culture while making a fortune for themselves in the process. They don't miss a beat. And finally, I'm going to close on rural economics and ag policy. I guess we shouldn't be surprised. What do you expect from a man that inherited $600 million from his father, declared bankruptcy 7 times, and then use the presidency to grip $3 billion out of leaders around the world. Donald Trump was born on third base, and he spent his entire life trying to convince people that he hit a triple. Think about it. Come see me after the speech and I'll explain it to you.
It's a slow
When it comes to agriculture and rural economies, the president, my grandpa would have said, is like a cow looking at a new gate. Get that one? All right, there's two things on tonight. He doesn't understand it, he doesn't care about it, and the people he appointed to oversee it are a mix of incompetence. We haven't seen, as my grandpa used to say, I wrote it down, Laurel and Hardy hosted a birthday party for the Three Stooges where Abbott and Costello performed their classic, Who's on First Base? Are you starting to see where I got my sense of humor? Republican tariffs have destroyed nearly 40% of our foreign agricultural markets. Farm bankruptcies are up over 40%, 46% in some cases. We lost over 15,000 small and medium-sized family farms last year. Planting season is here. We've got row croppers. I'm in the part of the country where I don't need to tell you this, but I want to say it anyway. We've got row croppers putting plants in the ground right now, and they haven't even sold the crops that they raised last year completely. And because of all of this, farmer suicides are at an all-time high since the 1980s. So I know what you're thinking right now as I close out. You're thinking, wow, Will, thanks for coming down to Callaway County. You're a ray of sunshine. Well, I've got good news for you, and I want to close on this good news. The tide is changing.
Yes.
And we have got our greatest opportunity in 40 years to reverse these trends that have nearly destroyed rural America. And it is going to happen in this upcoming midterm election. Rural supporters of the GOP are feeling the pain. And I know we get upset when people don't change their minds until they're hurting, but never forget what Will Rogers said. When a reporter asked him, Will, how do people in rural America learn? He said, some learn by reading, the lucky ones learn by observation, and the rest just have to pee on the electric fence for themselves. He really did say that. Well, there's a lot of peeing on electric fences going on in rural America right now. And if that's the shock it takes to get somebody to come around to our way of thinking, then pee away. He is the most unpopular president in American history. Independent voter approval is down to 18%. He's lost 6 to 9% of his Republican support in rural America. And this opens a door that we have to take advantage of. No one is coming to save us, guys. We are the cavalry right here in this room right now. We've got to tell our personal stories. We can't just quote statistics anymore and talk about how bad they are. Every time I go speak, I talk to 300 Republican Texas cattlemen in the state of Texas, and the very first question that came up, what do you think it was? Well, what about boys playing in girls' sports? And I just, every time this happens, but I came up with a new way to deal with this. I said, I'll tell you, I'm going to do it here in this room tonight, because it's going to emphasize a point that I want you to remember. I said, you know what? Great point. Let's ask the question. Everybody in the room tonight who did not get to play their sport of choice in high school because a person of the opposite sex at birth took your spot on the football team, the baseball team, or the basketball team, don't be embarrassed. Anybody here tonight that had that happen to them, raise your hand way up high. Get your hands up there, everybody. There's got to be at least 50 of you in here that had that opportunity. Nobody. I'm shocked. It's the same response I get everywhere. Well, let me ask this question. Who's got an elderly parent or a loved one in a nursing home right now? Keep your hand up if you raise it. Who's had difficulty getting a medical procedure done because the insurance company made you jump through hoops? Who has had a medical issue cause you financial and economic problems in your family that were great enough where you had to get a second job or make tough choices about what you were going to do next financially? Raise your hand. You get my point? While they've got us fighting about things that don't matter, the country is falling apart because we are not taking care of the things that do matter. And we're going to change that. And we're going to start it this year, and we're not going to stop until it's finished. And it's got to start now. We've got to also, I'm going to ask you to have a little bit of grace. We've got to accept back our friends who supported this guy as hard as it is. I'm not talking about racists and Nazis. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about everybody we know that would give the shirt off their back for anybody of any race, creed, color, background, and yet for some reason that we can't understand, no matter how many hours we spend thinking about it, they support this con artist. They're starting to change their minds. I just want to tell you one thing. There's no scenario in rural America where we win back rural America without changing minds. I don't care how many people tell you there are hidden Democrats under rocks like garden gnomes. It's not true. It took them 30 years to steal rural America away from the Democratic Party, and it's going to take an investment like that on our part to win it back again. And finally, let me just say this, because this makes me madder than hell every time I hear it. Don't let anybody tell you there's no difference between the two parties. You're here tonight because you're a Democrat, and you should be damn proud of the fact that you're a Democrat. Only one party offered the New Deal while the other party said, let the market take its course. And that was the Democratic Party. And if you flip your lights on when you get home at night, thank a Democrat. Only one party looked at poverty and the lack of health care in this country and said, we can create a great new society where we offer a safety net for all Americans who need a hand up, while the other party said, let Americans pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And that was the Democratic Party. Only one party said in a free country, Americans should be free to love who they want to love. Women should be able to make their own health care decisions. And we thrive as a country when we embrace immigration and diversity, while the other party preached the politics of fear and division and hate to gain the power that they have today. And it was the Democratic Party that did it the right way and the Republican Party that did it the wrong way. I'm a proud Democrat, and it's true, and it's time for all rural Americans to stand up and push back against the bad actors that are destroying our communities and a way of life, all in the name of power, greed, and protecting the rich. And I'll make this promise to you. I've got 5 grandkids, 3 granddaughters and 2 grandsons, and I'll be damned if I'm going to go to my grave with my little granddaughters as second-class citizens in this country that we fought so hard to get rights for women in. It is not going to happen while I've still got blood coursing through my veins. So I'll just say this. You get my back, I'll get your back. When your primary's over, if you're running unopposed, you call me and I'll be there and we'll spin a good yarn together. And I really do believe, guys, in the end, we'll see the greatest renaissance in rural America and Democratic control that we've seen in my lifetime. And thank you so much for having me tonight.